Hey, GLP-1 plus size community. Before we jump into the podcast, please take the time to leave us a 5-star review on whatever audio platform you're listening to the podcast on. Share your story and how the podcast has helped you. This will help us get referred up in the audio platform so that we can reach more people that need our help, our support, and guidance from our doctors. Help us get loud and change things. Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.
"20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise. That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you, based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
Welcome to the Plus Sides Podcast. Joining us today, Kat is frozen. And you're frozen, Kat. There you are. You froze for a second and now you're back. Hey.
I'm doing the robot, that's why.
Yeah, you are. What's up? What is with you? I don't know. We're having all the technical problems in the land.
It's good old brand new Wi-Fi.
Yeah, sure. There you go. Well, that works. Whatever works. I see you.
There we go.
Huzzah.
I'm by the
well. I have my pumpkins for all of our viewing audience. Aren't they cute?
The new pumpkins, aren't they? Because you had the orange ones.
Well, I have orange ones. I have white ones, and then I bought the turquoise ones. I have a TikTok shop problem, but I feel like it's okay because technically, and I ask your accountant, but it's a write-off. So technically, because I sell TikTok. So
true.
I'm just saying, technically.
Oh my gosh! I just had
you just aha, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my husband's an accountant, so I need to.
Mm-hmm. Hashtag right off.
I make them crazy, just like I married. Yeah. You know what? This is such unrelated. I married my dad.
Okay,
not like that. My dad was R.I.P. God bless you, Dad. My dad was an accountant as well, and I married my dad, and that was always the joke that I would tell my dad, I just married you. But yeah,
I know. So I married the redneck version of my dad. My dad's an attorney, and so I married the redneck version of my dad. Clearly, but he's reliable, good guy, right? That kind of thing. I looked for that, but he's also a Gemini and they change all the time. My dad and my husband.
You're Scorpio. So anyway.
Yeah, I know. Gemini and Scorpio. What were we thinking?
Your season's coming.
I know. I'm excited. We're still in the Libra season.
We are.
Mm-hmm. I am prepared. Do you have your pumpkin, Stanley?
No, I have my Halloween one.
What the heck?
And it goes in the
how it is. You don't love me and keep your pumpkin, Stanley.
I heard. Put them out. They have to get washed. You got to scrub the straws with your pipe cleaner and.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure when this one's gonna launch. But let's catch up, everybody. Because
let's do it. We've been through
we gotta catch you guys up. So Backstory, if you don't know, so John and I went to, like, representing the podcast, hopefully trying to represent our community, went to the Senate hearing in DC, where the CEO of Novo Nordisk testified as to the basically crazy prices of Ozempic. And, it was a lot of what my husband calls the DC two-step, but I do think there was a good thing of bringing a lot of these things to light around like PBMs, and payers and stuff like that. And we're going to have a lot more content going forward on this because it
Yeah.
is starting to become more discussions on how, if there needs to be legislation. And we just went just to be present. And, we're going to have a link in the show notes where you can order the shirt, but our shirts just said, make GLP-1s affordable for all. And we were able to get on with GMA, with ABC Nightline, and in Bloomberg, which has helped our podcast grow even more. And that's great. And so now I'm going to do something that people have been telling me to do from the beginning. I'm going to ask for the sale. Please consider becoming a paid member so that you can get our additional content, because we are trying to get loud and change things. And this is a movement, and we need your help. We need your help. My family's all in at this point. I'm hustling TikTok shop money to pay the bills, and like whatever we can do to try to keep this going, that's what we need to do. And we need you to contribute in any way that you can. If you cannot become a paid member, obviously we understand that. But if you engage with the content and you share it out with others, that is very, very powerful. So now that I've gone through that, when all this happened, we have had a lot of really good opportunities come our way for the podcast. And one of them is our guest tonight. So I'm very excited to be able to introduce him, and we will talk through all things GLP-1 and TikTok. So let's welcome in Dr. Kaplan. How you doing, TikTok specialist?
Hey.
Very happy to be here. Thank y'all so much for having me.
Mm-hmm.
This is exciting.
So excited to have you. It's very difficult to, like, I've tried to, like, I go into your videos, but they're always blowing up. And I'm like, I want you to be on the podcast, and I can't ever get you. And then this happened, and we were able to connect, and I'm so stoked about that. So it's like,
well, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for y'all's success. That's really great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited about it. We very much focus on trying to give our marginalized community a voice, right? And then try to help them understand their disease, and so that they can advocate for themselves, because there's such a big deficit in the available care, right? In the medication, the knowledge, and obviously like a lot of healing I think we have to do emotionally. Forgiveness we have to extend to ourselves and others. And so we try to cover all of that from a full like health and wellness perspective as we've grown into season 4 now on the podcast. And for people who don't know, because this is our first one, I've been able to announce this, we are finalists for the Anthem Awards, which are run by the Webbies. Keep in mind, this is not for podcast guys. This is for social impact work. So like we're in 2 categories, we're finalists. So like this is massive. Like we also, if you guys can go and vote, and I'll put links in like the show notes, go and vote for our, like, because if we get a lot of people in, then we can win like this big community voice award on top of these hopefully other ones. But that's the thing, is like we're being recognized for the good work we're doing as from like a community perspective. Like it's not just like a podcast award. This is such a big deal for us, and that's what we're trying to do, right? This is grassroots. Like we are trying to move forward this movement, and we want you to be a part of it. So
way to make it louder, get it, we're trying all about getting loud. So
that's incredible. I didn't realize this wasn't just specifically for podcasts, the award. That's awesome.
It's very cool. Yeah, we're so excited about it. So thank you. We're the more attention that we can get and the louder we can get, that's better. Because like I just say, like, unfortunately with our society, and I'm sure that you've seen this, I'm sure it must hurt you. Like you have I just feel your like heart through your content. Like I like the things that people say about fat people. Like it's like then the way they call them things, like there's just so much, that goes on.
Yeah. Well, there's such a disconnect, because I mean, even healthcare providers are still not on board with the idea that obesity is considered a chronic condition. I mean, they're still talking about diet and exercise, and it's obviously so much more complex than that.
Absolutely.
So it's the disconnect and the lack of understanding is so pervasive through all aspects of society, not just the patients or or just community or the population in general, but like the healthcare, the people that are supposed to know about this don't know about this.
Yeah,
so it's a very sad state of affairs.
It
It's
really
global
is,
too,
and it
yeah.
must like, it's frustrating for us as patients and for sure as creators, and I know it has to be for doctors, like, and so let's talk a little bit about that. So let's start with people that don't know you. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you help people.
Sure. I'm Jonathan Kaplan. I'm a board certified plastic surgeon, originally from Louisiana, but now based in San Francisco. My wife and I moved here about 11 years ago. And the reason that, aside from plastic surgery and mommy makeovers and all the different operations that I do in my office and Botox and fillers, we also have patients, or had patients coming in. This has been a few years ago now, where patients were coming in for tummy tucks and other body contouring procedures, and they weren't good candidates for surgery because their BMI, their weight was too high. So rather than turning them away, our nurse and nurse practitioners suggested that we start offering a weight management program. So we did this before the semaglutide and tirzepatide, was available from compounding pharmacies. We started a weight management program where we're offering, the best things we had besides coaching. There was phentermine, which wasn't perfect. Even back then, we knew it wasn't perfect, but we were offering different, those types of medications and coaching. And then we got access to semaglutide, the active ingredient Ozempic and Wegovy, or tirzepatide, the active ingredient Mounjaro and zepbound. Got access to that through compounding pharmacies because the name brand drugs are on shortage.
Mhm.
And so now our weight management program is really blown up. And so we're really busy with that now, in addition to still doing all the plastic surgery things. But then as a separate thing, just for full disclosure, I also had a separate company already that
Mhm.
dealt with price transparency in healthcare. And it also involved subscriptions for like Botox and things like that. And so those types of subscriptions that our platform supported was also able to be applied to weight management subscriptions, people who are on the subscriptions for these medications. And so now we've taken that company, we've expanded that to healthcare providers all across the country, not just plastic surgeons, but, OBGYNs and urologists and dermatologists. So we can talk about why they are offering weight management medications if y'all
Mm.
want.
Yes.
But now we're
Yes.
offering that platform to all of those providers that help patients. Basically, it automates the process for them getting their medications consistently every month, because as we all know, that if you're going with the name brand drug, it's hard to get. People are driving to other states to find a pharmacy that has it in stock. But that's kind of the whole. So the way I'm involved is not just as a healthcare provider, but also separately as a company that's helping other healthcare providers. I like to call it a provider to consumer company, PTC, rather than direct to consumer. With direct to consumer, you can get access to meds pretty easily, but then you really don't have any follow up. With provider to consumer, you're getting connected with an actual healthcare provider that stays your provider that you're getting the meds from, but
Mhm.
also can help you with any side effects you're having.
I love that. I
Awesome.
mean,
So
I will
that's my
tell you
story.
no, I love it. I mean, I will tell you one of the so I started on this journey, in July of 2022.
Oh, wow.
So, I've lost 110 pounds. I still live in a big
Congrats.
body. I'm still plus size, but I'm very healthy and I'm cool with that. And, I'm able to move throughout the world and, enjoy my life and all of those things. And, I will tell you when I used to do lives, because TikTok, right? Like GLP lives, that's what we call them, right? GLP support lives. You can't give medical advice, right? All you can do is be like, this is what I know. But the
Mm.
biggest questions are, what do I do when I'm nauseous? What do I do when I'm constipated? What do I do when I have diarrhea? Right. Now, luckily, because I have the podcast and I know from the doctors, they at least give me something. And what I can do is say, here's what I have done. Here's what doctors on the show have done. And then I can point to the resource, right? Because that way I don't give any medical advice. But it's such a big problem. And I'll say to them, because I know what it is, like I'll say, talk to your doctor. And it's one of two things. The
Right.
doctor doesn't know, right? And two, the person is afraid to talk to the doctor because they think this is their last effort, their last chance, the last thing they can possibly do that's available to them in terms of a care for obesity and a metabolic disorder. And so they don't talk to their doctor. They come to TikTok. So there's
Right.
nothing that we can do in terms of solving for that other than for me to continue to provide a resource that's being backed by doctors and actual knowledge and education, right? To help with
Right.
that because it's just too big. It's too big of a problem, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we're the middlemen.
Yeah, and it's funny when patients come to me for a consultation, we always
Yeah.
ask them, we do virtual and in-person consultations for the practice. And I'll say, how did you find us? And they're always very sheepish about saying that they found us on TikTok. And I was like, don't feel bad about it. It's like
Don't
TikTok
at
has,
all.
that's
No.
why we go to TikTok, because people are looking for good information. And it's almost easy for
Yeah.
us to provide good information in this like vast wasteland of bad information.
Yeah.
So it is
Yeah.
kind of a shame that people are a little embarrassed they're having to go to TikTok to get that good information, but at least they're able to find it.
Absolutely.
And it is terrible that they feel like embarrassed to go to their provider who's going to maybe be judgmental and like, oh, diet and exercise, or the provider wants to give them these medications, but they're within this medical industrial complex, like a Kaiser, not to pick on Kaiser, but it's just a lot of people in California know about it.
We can it's
that
fine.
you can't. Yeah,
I've been on Kaiser before.
So it's like you can meet all these parameters
all in
and
one
things,
building.
but they're like, oh, but you're not obese enough. Like, well, what the hell does that mean? Like,
ridiculous. It's like literally like going to the doctor and going, like him going, you have a little bit of cancer. Come back when there's more.
Exactly.
Like, what? You know?
I used to have a friend who would say, I just need to just gain a few more pounds and I'll be a candidate for surgery. Just
insane. It's true. It's so,
or I
it's
just
so
need
crazy.
to go up a few more points until I'm diabetic and then I can get my medicine. What? You know, like,
Right.
Why are we thinking this way? We have to change this.
Or they get you healthy. They get you down to your goal weight. They get you healthy and like, oh, we're not going to cover it anymore. And they're like, okay. So it's like, this is yo-yo dieting in a different way. But for PCOS, for example, like, that people don't necessarily meet the BMI criteria for that, but they come to me with a BMI of 25 and like, what am I going to do? Wait until they get to a BMI of 27 and then start prescribing. And I know that it's off label, but that doesn't make it illegal. It's totally appropriate.
Yes.
And so that's why we have a lot of PCOS patients who are under the BMI limit. But again, people, I think, sometimes misunderstand that just because you can't get insurance coverage, they think that you just can't get the medication. And I understand people want insurance coverage. I get it.
True.
Who doesn't want to pay less out of pocket?
Sure.
But just because you can't get insurance coverage, just because you don't meet the BMI criteria, you still can get access to these medications. We're still able to prescribe them for you. The big benefit for us is for the patient is that we're prescribing them the compounded version of the medication, which is already significantly less expensive than the name brand. So even if you have to pay out of pocket, at least pay less out of pocket.
There are some people, I would say, especially considering the influx of news that we've gotten since the press, may not understand what compound is. You're saying active ingredient, but let's pretend they don't know anything.
Absolutely.
Let's pretend they don't know anything, and then let's pretend like, because I think we probably have a lot of people like that. Let's think about like, what is it? And let's talk a little bit about what equals safe. I will tell you, a year and a half ago or so when we started the podcast, when the shortage was so bad and there were not any doctors coming out talking about what safe equaled. And so we had people taking really stupid risk. Okay. Like point blank period. Why? Because they're desperate. Right.
Absolutely.
And that's what they were doing. And so I put a call out to the doctors. I was like, as specialist, you have a responsibility to come forward and tell us what equals safe or safer or safe-ish. Like, we have to know something or people are going to get sick and die. Like, they're going to make bad decisions. Right. So we did have a really nice, very long episode where we had a compound pharmacist and then 2 obesity doctors that came on to kind of explain it to us. But that was early days. Right. So if we could talk a little bit more about maybe 503A or 503B or things like that, so people kind of know what to look for, I think that would be great.
And I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible.
Yeah, can we get to the juicy part with that Eli Lilly and all?
Absolutely. So I think the fundamental basics are, there's the traditional pharmacies that you go like the CVS and things like that, and then there's the compounding pharmacies. And the traditional pharmacies get their medications, from the generic drug manufacturer, the name brand drug manufacturer, whereas a compounding pharmacy, they were the original pharmacist, really, the original apothecary, where they are able to still get access to the active ingredients from an FDA registered manufacturer, and then they can make that into a product that a human needs. So for example, a human might need a liquid version of Tylenol that, they're on shortage, because through the triple demic when people had COVID and RSV and flu, that there was not enough acetaminophen or Tylenol in the liquid form for kids. And so compounding pharmacies were able to make a liquid version of that. So that's what compounding pharmacies do in that example. Another example is there's a certain dye that you can't take in a medication. So the compounding pharmacies can take the active ingredient and make it without the dye, and you can get it from them. Compounding pharmacies also make a lot of the medications for our pets and for horses and things like that. And so I think that also scares people. It's like, well, I get my pet's meds from a compounding pharmacy. I'm not sure about a human. Usually those are different pharmacies that offer each of those things. So that's what a compounding pharmacy is able to do, is they're able to provide medication that are even in short supply, or that you can't get that particular dose or things like that from the traditional name brand drug. And within compounding pharmacies, they have these different types that are based on the FDA's the Food Drug and Cosmetic Act codes like 503A, 503B. Those are just parts of the code, the law. And 503A are these pharmacies. And the truth is, like CVS and things like that, those are actually technically 503A pharmacies, but people don't think of them like that. Anyway, so with the compounding pharmacy, 503A versus 503B, 503A is mostly supervised by the State Board of Pharmacy in each individual state. So they have to get a license in each state that they send meds to, versus a 503B, which is mostly over under the purview of the FDA. But again, they're all getting their active ingredients from the FDA registered manufacturer. So the FDA, State Board of Pharmacies are all involved in this. So this isn't like you're just somebody's going into their backyard and making a still with whiskey and making their meds. Our whole supply chain is legit. And the way you can find out about that is you can ask your pharmacy for a certificate of analysis that shows you where they're getting it from and what is in it. So you can see that what you think it is what it is. And so that's what we're making sure that in our practice and all of our providers in our network are always making sure they're getting the meds from a 503A or 503B pharmacy with a certificate of analysis. Now, what Kat was talking about as far as Eli Lilly is that they said that their meds were going to be off the shortage list. And the thing is that, to kind of take you a step back, is that if certain name brand drugs are on an FDA shortage list, this isn't just a post-it note. It's an actual list that you can look up on the FDA website, that if certain things are on shortage, even if they're name brand, compounding pharmacies can step in and make these medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide, the active ingredients in Ozempic and Mounjaro, respectively. And that's 503A and 503B, and they've been making these active ingredients, but they're not generics. That's a completely different that means something different when you're talking about pharmaceuticals. So I don't call them generics because they're still under patent. The compounding pharmacies are just preparing it for human use, that they get what they get from an FDA approved manufacturer. Anyway, so Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, zepbound have all been on an FDA shortage list. The compounding pharmacies were making it. Eli Lilly said they were making enough of it. And if you go to the FDA shortage list, it would show up until a few weeks ago, it would show that all the dosages were either available or unavailable. And even if they were all available at the top, it still said currently in shortage, because both things can be true, that dosages can be available, but it may not be enough to meet demand. And so, for example, if I go to my distributor and I say, I want, 100 syringes of Ozempic because I've got 100 patients, they will say, oh, you can have 2. You can't have 100 because we don't have enough. So the demand was outstripping supply. And then recently, a couple of weeks ago, and we're not exactly sure why, the FDA kind of out of the blue said that tirzepatide or Mounjaro zepbound was off the FDA shortage list. And everybody's up in arms because everybody on the street is realizing the shortage is not resolved. We still can't get it. And so now the FDA has said, okay, we're going to reevaluate this and come up with the final decision on November 21st. But in the meantime, it's still on shortage, even if they don't list it on their website like that. So compounding pharmacies are still able to make it. This may be more out in the weeds, but between 503A and 503B, once things officially come off the shortage list, the 503B pharmacies have 60 days of grace period to continue having stockpile of the medication, continue to basically exhaust their stockpile. So we're still able to get it for 60 days from 503B pharmacies. But again, at this point, they're able to make it until further notice. 503A pharmacies don't have that grace period, but what they can do is they can adjust the dose by about 10%, and they can continue making it indefinitely. So you can still get tirzepatide. Maybe they add glycine to it to help with maintaining muscle mass. And then they also adjust the dose, and then they can make that indefinitely. So what I want to say to people out there is, don't believe the hype that even if you hear about things going off the shortage list, the compounding pharmacies are still going to find a way still to provide the medication to the providers who can provide it to the patients. So for example, even when tirzepatide went off the shortage list, there was no interruption in our providing tirzepatide to our patients, whether it was through the 503B pharmacies grace period, their stockpile that they still had, or 503A pharmacies adding glycine to it. But even despite that, there's a full supply right now going that we're able to provide to our patients. So I don't know if that was as succinct as you wanted it to be, but
that's perfect. Yeah. So that's not going to
really succinct.
Go ahead.
That doesn't really
long form content here.
So it's not, you don't see that really right now at this point in time affecting like the way you service your patients.
I do not. And I give, whenever I'm like at a meeting and I give talks about these medications to other healthcare providers, they'll ask me about the shortage list. And usually I give a pretty long-winded answer, except that the Sunday before this went off the shortage list, I was like, yeah, I don't see it being a problem. And I just left it as a short answer. And then a few days later, it went off the shortage list. So I never make the mistake of giving a short, truncated answer anymore. The full answer is, I don't think these medications are going anywhere as far as the compounding pharmacies are concerned. I think the fact that Eli Lilly thinks that they can make enough to keep up with demand is silly. The reason I say that is because right now, these are only indicated for type 2 diabetes and for weight loss for both meds, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, their meds that they're making. And then for Ozempic Wegovy, it's also indicated for heart disease. So already with just 3 indications from the Novo Nordisk side, 2 indications from the Eli Lilly side, they can't keep up with demand. And they're only going to start adding more indications like alcohol use disorder, fatty liver disease, chronic kidney disease, maybe staving off Alzheimer's disease, heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. So there's just going to be that many more indications coming out, and they already can't keep up with the demand right now. And I actually have this graphic that I post in a lot of presentations that if they just treated the 42% of Americans that were considered obese, then you're talking about treating those 42% of Americans once a week, because it's a once per week injection, 4 times a month, 12 months out of the year, that they would need to come up with 7.2 billion with a B, 7.2 billion injections a year. They can't keep up with that. Even if they're able to convince the FDA that somehow they have enough, the truth is there's not enough. The FDA is going to realize that. And even if the FDA decides they want to take them off the shortage list, the 503A pharmacies will continue to make this indefinitely by adjusting the dose. So I think this is going to be available in the long term. And again, remember, it's not just Ozempic and Mounjaro. They're going to it's not like they just made those drugs and they're going to stop. There's more medications coming out that are in the pipeline. Retatrutide is one people talk about that'll probably be available in 2025 under that name brand, whatever it is. And once that new fancy latest and greatest drug comes out, that'll quickly go on the FDA shortage list. And the compounding pharmacies already have the formula for that they'll start producing. So patients, don't be worried that these medications will be on a revolving door of an FDA shortage list. So either you'll get the name brand drug through your insurance, which is great. And if you can't get it that way, you'll be able to get one of these GLP-1 receptor agonist medications through compounding pharmacies. It's just too much of a demand and they don't have the manufacturing capacity for it. So
I feel like even with like the billions that they're putting in, this is just all like speculation for me. But the billions that they're putting into manufacturing, that takes years.
It takes years.
There's
actually one interesting thing. There's this company called Catalent that makes a lot of manufactured drugs for all these different name brand drug companies. And they're in the process of being bought by Novo Nordisk. And those Catalent manufacturing companies also make Mounjaro and Zepbound. So they're making it. So the FTC is looking at this. So even though Novo Nordisk is trying to build out and purchase more manufacturing plants to produce more of these medications, the FTC recognizes that the Federal Trade Commission recognizes that might be a monopoly, that they might reduce the ability for Eli Lilly to make those drugs in those manufacturing plants like they have been. So my point is, even though they're trying to expand capacity, the federal government is getting involved, that might be a monopoly, but also they're trying to build new facilities, which will take, to Kim's point, that those will take several years to build those, even to repurpose some of those manufacturing facilities. So they're going to have a lot of trouble getting to that demand. And the thing that's so funny to me, not funny, but just comical, quite frankly, is everybody's so focused like, oh, they're going to try and build up enough demand. We're only talking about America here. We're not even talking about Europe, that they can't even provide it to everywhere in Europe. They're talking about getting into China now, and they're only talking about offering the lowest doses. I mean, China apparently, because it has the most populous country, also has the most obese people. So that it's just comical to me that they're like, oh yeah, we're going to take care of the shortage. Like, you're only talking about the United States, and you're only talking about 2 to 3 indications, which this is much bigger than that.
Absolutely. And then, like, I don't know if you've seen the newest stuff yet. I haven't dug into enough around addiction, right? Being able to I mean, like, can you imagine? Like,
alcohol use disorder, no question about it.
And opioid addiction,
and sleep apnea
too. That they were showing, the most recent study that you're referring to, is they saw that people were dying less from overdoses from opioids and alcohol because they were on these medications that were curbing some of their curbing some of these temptations to take opioids and things like that. So it's really incredible. And I think the thing is that these studies that I'm talking about with opioid overdose and all that, those aren't really actually being performed by the name brand drug companies, but it's going to force them to have to allocate money to start coming out with those kinds of studies to then get FDA indications for it. So it's all just coming down the pipeline, no question about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think and I will say this, like, one of the things I try to say to people, and I'm not an affiliate for a telehealth or anything, but I want to try to tell people the majority of the weight that I lost, right, on this journey was on Ozempic Wegovy, like on semaglutide. It's a great medication, but many people are under the impression that because tirzepatide has the rate of losses more, that means that it's the best and the only. But
Right.
that's not true. It's a great like, I think that people don't understand. It's also been around a long time. It's approved for other indications. Like, we have more data on it. Like, this
Right.
isn't like, there are other options. And
Most
like,
definitely.
worst case, you know?
And I always explain that to our patients because I never want them, because we offer both semaglutide and tirzepatide. And for those listening, the semaglutide is $500 a month. The tirzepatide is $600 a month. That includes coaching, includes the medications for any kind of side effects they may have. But the point I want to make here is that I don't want them to think that the $600 one is the better one, that the tirzepatide, that they have to do that.
Right.
I don't want them to feel like we're trying to upsell them. We always tell them that both medications are great. Yes, it looks like tirzepatide has a little bit more weight loss based on the data in our practice, and their side effects are less, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have side effects on semaglutide. And, try that. We'll treat your side effects, but the side effects in general, on average, are mild, treatable, and time limited. And we'll treat those. If you're still having side effects, you can always switch over. But I definitely don't want people to feel like they have to upsell themselves to the more expensive one, because that's the best one, because that's not necessarily the case for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've taken all of them because of my and because I've been doing it so long, because of shortage, because of step therapy, because of all the things. And I think they're all kind of like, I always describe it as like, it's like having 3 employees, and they're all great employees, and they all get the job done. They just kind of go about it a little different. Maybe one's a little bit slower, a little, you know what I mean? But you get it done. And like, I really do feel like,
it's a great analogy.
I mean, it's really very good. Like, and I'm glad that I was put in a position, in this weird ass position, to do that, because I'm glad that I can speak to that.
You
right.
get to
Like,
try them all too. Like,
yeah. Oh, and then when Reddit comes out, get it. I'm going to try all of them. Now it's like a thing.
So that's actually, if you don't mind me going back a little bit, we were talking about the pharmacies. So retatrutide is not FDA approved yet for anything, but people are still able to get it. And I want to caution people that since we were talking about safety, that there are pharmacies out there legally that, because retatrutide is for those of you who don't know out there, it's a triple G agonist. It's GLP-1, which is like Ozempic and Wegovy, but also has GIP, where these are all GI hormones we're talking about, that the body naturally suppresses your appetite, but these medications just augment that. And then, so aside from GLP and GIP, there's also glucagon, another hormone. And so retatrutide mimics all 3 of those hormones. So they think it's going to provide bariatric surgery-like results as far as weight loss without the surgery. The thing is, it's not FDA approved yet. So, because it's patented, the formula is public knowledge. And so compounding pharmacies were able to get those. And so they are selling it as research grade products. So it's legal for them to sell it as research grade products, but it's illegal for them to promote them to humans to be used for human use. But they can still sell it to a human and act like, well, we don't know what these humans are using it for. We think they're going to use it for research, right? And so people are taking retatrutide. You're able to get it without a prescription. And so you really, there's so little oversight of that you don't know what kind of impurities you're getting. So if we're talking about safety, you got to go with these compounding pharmacies that are using FDA registered manufacturers that are under, pharmacy and FDA, State Board of Pharmacy and FDA oversight. But if you're getting research grade medications that are not meant for human use, it's like buyer beware. You got to be careful. So it might work well, but if you want to do it honestly and legitimately and safely, you got to wait for it to get FDA approved and get the name brand drug, whatever it's going to be called, or wait for that to go onto the FDA shortage list, and then you get it from a compounding pharmacy.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a very common misconception that it's sort of like, that they think it's like the other ones. Oh, well, no, it's fine. It's the same thing. It's this, that. It's not. Like, it's still in long-term studies. The studies aren't even done yet. Like, it's not like with Mounjaro, where we were taking Mounjaro while we were waiting for them to get it approved for obesity, and then take zepbound, and because it's the same thing. It's approved for nothing yet. Nothing. What if
Correct.
something
So
crazy
clinical
happens? We
trials.
don't
Now,
know,
you
right?
can go, yeah, I was gonna say you can go to Eli Lilly and see if you
Yeah,
qualify for the clinical trial for it, but
that's true.
Right. And I've definitely had commenters from TikTok saying that they're in the clinical trials and they're
Yeah,
saying it
yeah,
works
yeah.
great, which is not helping anything because people's like, oh, it works
oh yeah, I
great
gotta
and I
have
can
it.
get
Yeah,
it.
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. And I think there are some people that are non-responders that think that maybe they'll be a responder on that, or some people that have not lost as much, or even people like Kat and I who've only we lots of plateaus and stalls, like,
That's a good segue. Let's ask about set weight
let's do you
and the
ask.
thermostat
Your
and
turn.
yeah.
Yes, do that.
Yeah.
Then you
So,
get to a
so
certain
I did
point
that on
and then your
purpose,
body starts to
obviously.
fight us.
it's a
Then
very
what
smooth
happens?
segue, very smooth. So yeah, so the thing is that people will, and one of these things that like Jillian Michaels talks about is like, oh, but these medications, they have a plateau. Well, everything has a plateau. We don't, that's our body's like evolutionary protection to
Yes.
like
Yeah.
not let us keep wasting away to nothingness.
Yes.
I mean, that's why people don't disappear that are on these medications. That's why people who have bariatric surgery don't disappear because they all have a plateau.
Yeah.
And so these medications have a plateau that are just like everybody, just like any other medication or surgical intervention or diet and exercise. And that's because your body has a body set weight like a thermostat so that your body will only let you lose a certain amount of weight, which is why when you lose weight with diet and exercise, that thermostat pulls that your weight back up somehow, whether you might still be eating just as little, but you're
Mhm.
just metabolizing it slower. And so you do regain weight. And so that's one of the things these medications do is they do affect the body set weight, that thermostat, which they think is in the hypothalamus to get you down to a lower body set weight, but there's again still going to be a plateau with that.
Right.
So with our patients, if they do get to a plateau which actually plateaus aren't always a bad thing. If you get to a plateau that also equals your goal weight, then that's great. You're golden. And so what we give people that option is to switch to a maintenance subscription. So rather than losing more weight, maybe they don't need, they don't need one shot a week, 4 times a month to lose more weight. They just want to maintain. So maybe they can get away with that with 3 shots a month, 2 shots a month, or 1 shot a month. So we let them switch to a less expensive subscription where we send them less medication for fewer shots and lower cost. And they continue doing that for as long as they want to maintain that weight. But if you get to a plateau that's well above your goal weight, then there are things you can do to try to get down to that goal weight, still get off that plateau. And so if you're on Ozempic, go to the highest dose of Ozempic or semaglutide, which technically is with wegovy is 2.4 milligrams. If that's still not getting you where you need to be, then you can switch to tirzepatide and go up to the highest dose on that, which is 15 milligrams, which is a little bit more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we're also doing for patients is for no additional cost is that we'll also add metformin on, which is a different type of anti-diabetes medication and a different class of drugs. And it is not leading to people having these catastrophic decreases in their glucose level, their sugar level.
Yeah.
So we can add metformin on to help them get off their plateau and get them down to their goal weight. There's bupropion, which can be used early on to help people start getting their weight loss jump started a little bit faster. So there's different techniques and things like that. And of course, throughout all of this, diet and exercise, because you still want to eat healthy, you want to high protein foods because you are eating less. You want to drink a lot. I think the most overlooked side effect of all this is that people are eating less, they're drinking less, they're getting dehydrated, and that's leading to most of the side effects. So
yeah, for sure.
having a bottle of water around.
Yeah.
Dehydration. Yeah. Dehydration isn't just that I'm a little bit thirsty. It's like it could make you feel the sickest you've ever felt.
Yes,
so and then of course exercise
and trapped gas both can mess you up really bad.
Trapped gas.
Yes, I did.
I remember Dr.
This is a
Kaplan.
health and wellness podcast. Trapped gas is awful.
Trapped gas hurts.
You're like, I'm dying. I'm in the hospital. They'll be like, you're full of gas.
You're FOS. Well, that's what we say in medicine. FOS.
FOS.
Okay.
Full of
shiitake mushrooms. There you go. Say shiitake mushrooms. Anyway.
So that's those are the things that we help people with as far as maintenance, or if they again get to their plateau before they're ready. There's different things you can do. Unfortunately, there is, I would say, less than 10% of people that are not going to respond as much as I should say that are going to be non-responders. I don't want to say that people don't lose as much as they want, because everybody always wants to lose a little bit more. But there was a study that showed that with tirzepatide, with Mounjaro and zepbound, that when those people were in that study for the 1 year and 5 months, that 97% of people lost at least 5% of their body weight. So while they might not have lost as much as they want, if you really stayed on it for a whole year and 5 months, that 97% of people lost at least 5%. So it definitely worked, but you may feel like, that's really expensive to only lose 5% of my body weight. And I understand that. but it's
Well,
still
kind of.
97% of people lost weight. It's really
Totally, like,
incredible.
losing any is a win, right? Especially if you have
Mhm.
obesity, because the difference
Correct.
of, like, I'm sorry, but, like, and also, like, let's talk about the
The
inflammation piece. Like, I
inflammation.
feel like people forget about that. Obesity is a chronic inflammatory condition. Like, it affects all the organs in our bodies. We know this from you guys coming on our show and telling us about it. That helps you move through the world. Like,
It's
you
incredible.
know?
It is.
Joints, like,
Yes.
That's what people are talking about. Their joints, they're having less
Yes.
joint pain, less back
yes.
pain, even before they've lost the weight. So that's the thing. And people are quick
Yes.
to say, oh, it's just the weight loss. That's why their heart disease
Wow.
is improved,
Mhm.
because they lost weight. But these studies are showing that while yes, a lot of people are losing weight, even the people that didn't lose weight had improvement in their heart disease symptoms, like major cardiac events reduced,
Yes.
for stroke, fatal and non-fatal heart attack. Those things were reduced even before they lost weight, that their joint pain was reduced even before they
Mhm.
lost weight. So there's that anti-inflammatory effect, which is, I know, is kind of nebulous. It's kind of hard to measure that,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Oh, I
I
can
don't know
measure.
how many people you have to ignore before
Yeah.
you realize that maybe there's something to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
Have
absolutely.
you
I think
noticed
I think
something?
it's such a big deal. Like, it's the difference in, like, one thing I'll say is, like, and I do think that I had, like, the anti-inflammatory piece, like, on semaglutide and even on
Mhm.
liraglutide, but as I went to tirzepatide, it was like a whole different ball game. Like,
That's
it's the
great.
difference in you going out and living your life and moving more and not. Like, we've gotta consider that. I mean, we know how many people have, like, problems with, like, their joints. Like, I have polyarthritis. I have arthritis in the land, and that's not just because of obesity, it's because genetics. But I mean, me being able to do that is huge, you know? And I think that we had, just like you said, how many people do we have to hear say, "Hey, this is changing my life just from this alone," right? So it can't always just be about losing the weight. It's got to be about, like, your whole health, you know? It
And
really, I
there's
think we've learned that over the past 2 years, you know?
That makes me think of,
and
like, we were talking to a doctor before, and,
Yeah.
Dr. Soa, she said it's
Yeah.
not just weight loss. Of course, these medications help, like,
Yeah.
you're talking about PCOS and other, like, we were just talking about all throughout this whole episode,
Yeah.
like, all the other indications
Yeah.
that
right.
would indicate, I said they would indicate, that would
Yeah.
lead
Sure.
you to be on it long term.
Yeah.
So,
And
Yeah,
so that's
true,
the thing, is
true.
that talking about it long term, and I understand people don't want to be on medication the rest of their life, but I also think that when you tell people they shouldn't be on it the rest of their life, or that they don't need to be on it the rest of their life, I think I have patients who are starting when we do the consultation, they're like, "Oh, I'm only going to do this for 3 months or 6 months." Like they feel like they're under the gun to get off it as soon as possible.
Yes.
And I understand the longer they're on it, yes, we're generating more revenue. I'll point out that elephant in the room, but the truth is that,
People
like,
work hard and should get paid for the it's you know what I mean? I'm so
right.
sorry.
No, that's fine. I appreciate that. But
Yeah.
that's the thing, is that when you are putting people under this perception that they have to get off as soon as possible, that's not healthy either.
No.
Because then they're going to be in this position where they're going to get off of it probably too soon. They're going to start to regain weight, and then you have this yo-yo dieting problem, and
yeah.
then they
Yeah.
feel bad about themselves. They failed themselves, and then they come back to
Yeah.
us. That's one of the reasons we actually started the maintenance program, was so they could afford to stay on it longer and not feel that rush to get off as quickly as possible, that pressure to get off as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
because I know that they want to stay on until they get to their goal weight, and then they want to see how they can do with fewer shots a month, but
Sure.
also with all these other benefits that we're talking about, the PCOS, the anti-inflammatory effect,
Mhm.
that I think that you're going to see that a lot of people are going to stay on these meds the rest of their life, not necessarily once a week, 4 times a month. Maybe they'll be taking a shot once or twice a month.
Right.
And that's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, we're talking about,
No.
people being on aspirin the rest of their life.
Right.
And,
True.
Or friggin' blood
and
pressure medicine, for God's sakes. Like, I mean, I
right.
don't know, it sucks. I mean,
Yeah.
I would love if I could get off of it, but I know there's been a couple times where I've missed it and my blood pressure goes back up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
look
that's
at
a
the
good
steroids.
reason,
yeah.
and you
Yeah.
shouldn't be felt to be made guilty about that or judged by that. And I understand people will also say, well, we got to change the food in this country. I was like, I get that. Nobody's going to really disagree with you, but
Yeah.
I think we can do both right now. Like, I don't
Yeah.
think we just, like, okay, we're changing the entire landscape of food culture in America,
Yeah.
and we're not going to let anybody take these meds. We can let them take the meds, change the food culture over decades.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the problem is, I don't know that you're ever really going to be able to totally change the food culture because of Twinkies. People love Twinkies,
Sure.
and that's not ever
All
going to
about
go
Little
away.
Debbie's.
And Oreos,
Little
right?
Debbie snack cakes. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, certainly improving the food culture in America, and getting rid of preservatives. Of course, all that is good, and we should
Yeah.
do all that. We should pursue that. But in the meantime, we should also allow people this incredible man-made or woman-made invention. Actually, it's also woman-made. We actually do know that women were very much involved in GLP development. But these Nobel Prize winning, eventual Nobel Prize winning medications that we should not ignore that they exist and should take them in the meantime.
You made a great segue for us.
Yeah, you did.
Which I'm glad I could be of help.
Yeah.
$20 a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise. That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you, based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
Yeah. So let's talk about News Nation. I'm sure
right.
a lot of people caught you on News Nation. Jillian Michaels, still preaching diet and exercise, that's good. It's honorable. Which is the only way to sustain or for sustainable weight loss. What's your take? Why do we see so much regain from Biggest Loser contestants as well?
No question. Yeah, and that's something I said on the show, and they enjoyed talking over each other on News Nation. But I went back and looked and I was able to make my points. I was able to still talk through all the craziness. But she is partly trying to protect her livelihood. She's big on diet and exercise. But the thing that's crazy about with diet and exercise, obviously those are important: eating healthy, exercising, maintaining lean body mass. But it's just crazy how we've been told our whole lives that diet and exercise is what's going to help you lose weight. And it really doesn't provide sustainable weight loss. It doesn't. It's important. We should do those things, but not for the purpose of solely of just losing weight. There's other things. We need to change the food environment in the whole country. Okay. That's one thing we could do.
For sure.
But again, that's a long-term plan. In the short term, these medications help. And that's what I think Dan Abrams was talking about, is like, we need to do both, change the food environment and also offer these medications to people. And so that's the thing, is that your body, the way we eat, we become more insulin resistant. So when sugars come into our body, the insulin doesn't do what it should do and put it into our tissues and be used as energy. It shifts it into our tissues to be stored as fat. That's the problem when you become more insulin resistant, is that you're storing more of this fat. So that's why when you're on these medications, even though patients tell me all the time, I don't really eat that much. It's like, that might be the case, but the way your food is going to be processed once it comes in your body on these medications is going to be different. And that's why you're going to lose weight, even if you're eating the same amount. But the truth is, people really do eat snacks every now and then. They have dessert every now and then. And those things add up. With these medications, you start to stop doing that. You have fewer snacks and fewer desserts. So as far as News Nation goes,
still have snacks and desserts, for the record.
You can still have, yes, you just won't have as many of them. And you don't have like one bite.
Right?
You won't want to. You won't have as many bites of that. You won't feel like eating that whole dessert. You won't, because you won't even eat the entire meal that you had on your plate to start with. You won't eat the whole steak anymore. You won't eat the whole dessert. So those are things that we talked about on News Nation. And that was, so diet and exercise, great, but it's not the answer to this. And it's just very frustrating for patients when they go to their provider who says, like I said before, diet and exercise, and that's all. And like, okay, you're not going to help me with anything else. And so, I mean, because that was one of the things, like, as I also talked about earlier, is that with our patients coming in for surgery, before you would say diet and exercise, and then they would really never lose the weight. And then they would go end up having the operation elsewhere when they were morbidly obese. And so they wouldn't have the results they want. It was probably, and it's also very unsafe. It becomes increasingly more unsafe to have surgery when you're morbidly obese. Now, there's certain operations you have to do, like heart surgery, but for cosmetic procedures, you don't want to take those chances of people having surgery when they're morbidly obese, which increases their surgical risks, as far as like blood clots and things like that. So it's just safer to get those people down to a healthier weight rather than just saying diet and exercise. And that's why that's where these medications come in. But it was a lively debate on News Nation. And that was one of the things that Jillian Michaels said about, that, you'll hit a plateau, and like, okay, like you always hit a plateau.
This is a weight loss thing, right? Just like Ozempic face. It's a weight loss thing. Like,
it's a weight loss thing.
I mean, because, Kim and I would talk about this all the time, but like, I've always been into fitness. I was always in sports. I've always been active. And I was obese as well. So that was my big frustration as well. Because when you exercise a lot, you get hungrier.
Absolutely.
When you have insulin resistance, or if you have a little bit of binging issues, which has been really helpful with the Mounjaro. No, heavy all my life. And I worked out like a banshee. Sometimes.
and you were already doing all the right things. And so like, you're
The
starting
right
to
things.
figure out like what's wrong with me, you know, and that's
Mhm.
that's obviously not a healthy way to
Yeah.
feel.
We always talk,
Uh,
go harder, work out more, do
Right.
right.
do 2
And then
days,
that
right?
leads into other issues, you know, that,
Mhm.
so anyway, so yeah, that's why the medications have been helpful for people from just such an emotional standpoint, as well as all the
Yeah.
Absolutely.
physical benefits. I mean, I have patients who are taking the medication to help stop smoking, and it's working for them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're losing a little bit of weight in the process, but maybe they didn't have that much weight to lose to
That's
begin
great.
with. But now
Yeah.
there's not smoking or vaping. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm a big believer in these medications, and even for off-label use, which is
Same.
still legal. I can prescribe it as a healthcare
It's
provider.
very common in medicine.
It's
Like,
very
it's very
common.
common to
I
write
mean,
something off label. I'm so
for
tired of people saying all this garbage about
right
it.
for the
It's
longest
forever.
time, Botox was only approved for the 11s right here, but
Yeah.
people were, of course, using it for the forehead, the crow's
Yeah.
feet. It's gotten
Mhm.
other indications since then, but yeah, people get thrown off by the idea of off-label use. It sounds like you're doing something dishonest, but
Right.
that is how healthcare works. Is that the FDA can't get to all these indications in time, and so as long as you're offering these
Yeah.
treatments, you know, and it's not causing problems, then it's okay to offer them for off-label purposes, and
Yeah.
it works. That's the other thing, is it's not only not causing problems, it's actually working.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
it
great.
does.
And I think also too, like a lot of people don't understand, and I was one of them in the beginning. I was like, why are people that aren't obese taking this medicine? Just like how people, why are people dying? You know what I mean? The same kind of thing. But and it's just because of the lack of, I think, information and stuff, right? That's out there. But we know from the doctors on the show talking about insulin resistance. And I think they barely got that in at the end of the Nation thing, right?
But it
It
was
always
exciting. We
was
heard
every time I
insulin resistance
see,
mentioned. We're like,
we were
yeah.
like, thank God, right? But it was like the first time, because I'm telling you, like we were watching the Oprah special, because she's done several, but when we were watching the Oprah special that she did, it was on YouTube with Weight Watchers. Anyway, and at the end, she had the endocrinologist at the end, and
Right.
she said, "Why do I eat cake and I gain 5 pounds and she doesn't?" And she said, "Because you will survive a famine." And I thought that was the most important thing. Why didn't you front load that? Why aren't we talking about this? People that
Yeah.
have PCOS have insulin resistance. And
Stick
so
with me, I'll
I really
survive.
want, like, right? Like, I was like, hello. That was my biggest takeaway from that whole 2 hours of
Right.
gooberness.
Why didn't you lead with that?
Yeah, lead with that. Like, let's set the stage with reality here, like in science, because that part's true, you know? Is that who's buzzing? Is that me? Are you buzzing? Is it me? I'm sorry if I am. It was me. Hold on.
Maybe it's me. I
Oh,
turned everything
I
on to
know.
do not
No, we're
disturb.
fine. I live by a high school, and
I've
sometimes you
just
can
been
hear
running
the
my mouth.
band
We'll turn it off.
practicing.
Yeah.
All right.
So
No
I'm
more
like,
buzzing.
"Got it?"
No more
I
buzzing.
think that's what's important though. Like you mentioning the whole BMI and insulin resistance and stuff, but like there are people, PCOS is awful. It is really painful, and people just blew me off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, every month it was so painful, and not to mention all the middle weight that I just couldn't get off, no matter what.
Right. And
You
they
know?
were treating patients with metformin for that. And there was some
Yeah,
success, but
and that's
there's multiple
unbelievable.
studies going on right now
Yeah.
showing that these GLP-1s are going to show that there's better results,
Yeah.
better than metformin. It's
Yeah.
just like everybody's studying a new thing, and I know people talk about it's like it's a miracle drug, but I mean, it does work for a lot of things.
We do
Don't
have
call it a
miracle
miracle.
drugs. We
But
do.
because
That exists.
miracle drugs also suggest you don't know how they work, but we have a good idea. I mean, this
Yeah.
class of medication has been around for over 20 years, and I think
Yeah.
that's another misconception is
Yeah.
people think that they're
True.
new,
Brand new,
or
yeah.
that we don't know about all the side effects. It's like, well, we
Yeah,
know
we
a lot of the side effects. I mean, every time I hear a new side effect in the news, it's never ever something new or that wasn't included in the FDA paperwork filed by these companies. So I understand that
Like,
it might
what
be
are the
new to
side
you.
effects of obesity? You know what I'm saying?
The other
Like,
crazy thing is that people are missing that. It's like, you know,
yes.
you're reducing the people always talk about the medullary thyroid cancer, which was mostly seen in lab rats. You're more likely to die of the 13 obesity related cancers if you
Yes.
remain obese. And
Yes.
people just don't want to see the both sides of that. It was just really interesting because I don't know what they have to gain by remaining ignorant about it. I mean,
Well, I do think that, in my opinion, and I was going to say it because I make TikToks about it and Instagrams about it and all things. In my opinion, the people that we see that are naysayers are two different kinds of people, right? They fall in two categories. One, you all of a sudden becoming thin, and maybe they are thin, right? It's what it says about them and their thinness, and possibly putting, I think I saw a really good TikTok from some girl, just random, I don't know anything about, that specifically said that it will, if in society we have decided that lazy and is equals fat, right? That gluttonous equals fat. And then all of a sudden those people are thin. What are we going to do in terms of morality? How are we going to know who's morally good? Right? Like what that does
It's
to the
really scary.
brain and the confusion that creates. I thought it was brilliant. And then I also think the other category people fall in is they're trying to sell you something, right? Don't do this because it's scary, but buy my supplement, right? And you know what I'm saying? Like it's one of two, you know what I'm saying? And like Jillian Michaels said on your interview when you guys were doing it, she was like, it would be the easiest thing in the world for me to do this, and this, and start selling this and be like this and be like Weight Watchers and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, because she'd have to admit she's been wrong her whole life. That's the thing.
Right.
There are some personalities that will never allow for that to happen. And I said it while I was watching it because I was like, you'd have to
Right.
say you were wrong.
The
You'd have
whole
to
time I
say no.
was watching her talking about this, all I could think of was Elle not I don't know, maybe I can't remember her name. It's Reese Witherspoon's character
Hell,
in
yeah.
Legally Blonde. It was Elle, yeah,
Yeah.
in Legally Blonde, that the person, the superstar fitness guru who was in jail, she had an alibi, but she couldn't admit to her alibi because she would have to admit that all of her exercise wasn't all just due to exercise, because she had had liposuction, and that's why she was recovering after the operation, and that's why she didn't murder her husband or whatever.
Exactly. Like
And
she
the
was,
whole,
there was just like too much shame. Like,
too
you know what
much
I mean?
shame, too much
Yeah.
embarrassment. She would have looked seen as
Yeah.
a fraud, and that's how Jillian Michaels is. That she can't admit that. And I did say that I think she can have it both ways. I think she can say that she can embrace this and say all the people that are losing weight, all these amazing medications, they're losing lean body mass and they need diet and exercise, and that's why they need me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like
But
that.
she
That's
didn't
for
see it that way.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
all of these, like, and I've talked to some on the show, like personal trainers and all of these different people. You have an opportunity here to learn to have empathy, growth, and blow up your business. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like, why wouldn't you just take it? You know? And it's because certain people just can't admit that the way they were doing things was wrong, right? Like,
Right.
and I think
Well,
that's
maybe
what it
it's
comes down to.
something new, maybe not even wrong, like just
Yeah.
it's something new.
Well,
Be the
human
GLP movement coach. I mean, you could like come up with a TikTok
Seriously.
handle for that easily.
Yeah.
At
absolutely.
the end of the day, these are the biggest things since penicillin,
I
and
agree.
you got to get on board with it. They're not as new, as I mentioned, they're not as new as everybody thinks.
Yeah.
It's just, as a healthcare provider, I've never seen anything like this since in my career. I mean, penicillin was well before my career, but
Yeah.
just, I've never seen anything in my career that's been as effective and has really been vetted out over decades. By the time everybody learned about it, it really is incredible. And so I'm excited to be able to offer it to my patients now, because now you're not that same old tried and true diet and exercise person that frustrates your patients, that you're
Yeah.
actually giving them something new to work with.
Yeah. I think that's so true. And like I one thing she she couldn't get away with, if you're gonna eat less, right? And nobody ever asked this. This blows my mind. If it was just about eating less, why wouldn't we take cheap ass phentermine? Why wouldn't we take all these other things that make you eat less? Why wouldn't we do that?
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
reason, because something's wrong,
The
right?
brain.
Yeah, something's wrong in the brain. Something's wrong with the way we metabolize. Like something's actually wrong. That's why there's a
Yeah.
thing called a metabolic disorder. But like nobody's saying that. Why wouldn't anybody? Like, did you see? Did you see TMZ going up to Kathy Bates, and poor Kathy Bates trying to educate the TMZ boy that goes, "You push the plate away. Good for you." I wanted to punch her in her
I didn't see
Well, that's Dolores Claiborne. So
listen, Kathy Bates like trying to be like, well, there's
Nice to
a
Kathy Bates.
ghrelin, that's a hormone in your stomach. And she was just as gracefully as she possibly could, this woman. And then she goes, good for you for pushing the plate away. Like, because she was just trying to incite, right? Nobody's asking, why in the world would we go through all of this? Right? If it was just eating less, because we can eat less, we can take other drugs to eat less, right? But there's a reason. This one, the stimulant's not good for us, right?
Not at
Long
all.
term. Like, why? Why didn't anybody ask, why is a diabetic medication meant to treat insulin resistance helping people with obesity? Like, it blows my mind that people aren't making this connection in the media. Like,
And
no,
and there's just obviously this very, very obvious, well, not obvious yet, but there's this underlying biochemical reaction that's, leading to the reduction in inflammation and all these things that there's something there that we still haven't gotten to the bottom of,
clearly.
that's going to make it even more incredible. We're going to see even more applications for it.
Mhm.
But yes, right now we understand the GLP-1, how it reduces the appetite, it helps control the sugars better, it reduces the insulin resistance. So there are certain aspects that we do understand, but this anti-inflammatory effect, we still don't really understand that. And that doesn't make it bad. Oh, you don't, and then people will jump on that. Oh, you don't understand it. You're prescribing this. Like, no,
That's common though, right?
the brain
Like, for
still
medicine.
doesn't even know how the brain works. Okay. There's still some aspects that we're still trying to figure out here.
Yeah, totally.
But we realize that they are still safe. And,
Mhm.
as far as the different cancers we talked about, and people are
Mhm.
quick to talk about pancreatitis, but those things are really rare.
Yeah.
I'm not minimizing the seriousness of pancreatitis or thyroid cancer, but I am minimizing how often they actually happen. I mean, people are also quick to talk about the stomach paralysis.
Oh gosh.
And that's
Yeah.
part of how the medications work, not stomach
Yeah.
paralysis, but the delayed gastric emptying taken to which is how they work, taken to an extreme can lead to the gastroparesis and the stomach paralysis.
Mhm.
But again, all very rare side effects. And I'm sorry for the people that have those,
For sure.
but you
Mhm.
can't scare away the 99% of humans who can benefit from this, from the
Yes.
1% or less than 1% that are having those most serious side effects. It's
Right.
definitely less than 1%
And
when you
it's
take
something
all
to
those serious side
consider,
effects together.
right? Like that's what we
Certainly.
are talking about here is education. It's something to consider. Here's the less than 1% that's gonna happen to you. It could happen to you, like risk versus reward. I always say, how sick are you now? How sick will you be in a year? Right?
Right. No
Like
question.
that's what it comes down to, is being able to weigh that out. Now, I do think that doctors should definitely like have those conversations so people will know. But I
Mhm.
think that it's important for them also. But we know a lot of doctors don't know about this. Like
No.
it's and they don't want to. That's a problem. I hope that there will be more like education from doctors to doctors, because that's what they do in the UK. Like
Right.
so we had a doctor on, Dr. McCarty, and he was talking to us specifically about like how he was going around and changing things, right? Like having these, like, he's like, I'm telling you, I would see doctors in the front being like, I'm not doing, and then he would make them understand, right?
Mhm.
And then it was like things started to change. And he said he really only saw it backslide when the shortages started happening. And then it was all, you're taking it from the diabetics and that stupid ass narrative. You know what I'm
Now,
saying?
and so for those people who don't know about that narrative,
Yeah.
that these medications are, so people are talking about how these medications, when they're going on shortage, you're taking it from the diabetics
Mhm.
who need it to live. That's type 1 diabetes that needs insulin to live. These are for type 2 diabetes. And there are a lot of type 2 diabetes medications out there that are alternatives if you can't
Yeah.
generally get the one that you want.
Mhm.
But yes, that was that narrative. There was just a lack of knowledge about the differences between type
Mhm.
1 and people thought that diabetes was just a monolith. It was all just one disease, but they're
Mhm.
very different diseases. Type 1 diabetes absolutely need insulin or they will die. And there's either from autoimmune disorders, juvenile diabetes, just whatever reason their
Yeah.
pancreas is producing no insulin.
Right.
Whereas with type 2 diabetes, it's typically from obesity where their pancreas is just getting burned out.
Mhm.
It's not making enough, it's not able to make enough insulin because of that insulin resistance. The tissues aren't responding. So the pancreas tries to make more and gets burned out. And there's different ways to, so they're just totally different disease processes that people have to understand. And that's kind of what it all comes down to, is ultimately educating people to a depth, a greater depth than they probably are prepared for.
Yeah.
That if you really want to understand this, you're going to have to learn more than you really want to learn in a 10-second, 60-second TikTok video,
Totally.
which is
That's
why
why
we
we
make
have the
lots of,
podcast.
that's why we have a podcast. That's why you make lots of TikTok videos so you can get their attention while it's there.
Totally.
Yeah.
But it requires definitely the education of the healthcare providers, certainly, who are definitely down on it.
Mhm.
But that's happening. I mean, that's going to be trickling down. And as the
Mhm.
patients keep asking about it, it's generational, I guess, that healthcare providers that are willing to be open-minded and learning new things,
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
as
I
opposed to
get
the
that.
much older providers that maybe are totally against
Yep.
it. It's going to take time, but like many things, the consumers are going to drive
Mhm.
it. If
Yeah.
I
you,
just want to make a note. My older sister is a DNP, a doctorate nurse practitioner, right? And she said during her PhD courses, a lot of people in her class where their project. I really am not giving this justice because it's a PhD program, and I'm sure
like they had a thesis they had to
the
do.
thesis, right? So many of her students or her classmates did projects on GLP-1 medications. like
Yeah.
so many, like majority of our class.
And that's like all the talk now. And it, like, the thing is, back when I was in med school, where GLPs were around, but that wasn't really something that we studied back in med school. I mean, we're mostly, I mean, that was before they had all the, like, they were still talking about AZT and HIV meds when I was in med school at the end of the 90s, or and so it's definitely, that's the hot topic right now. Any conference you go to, any healthcare conference, the GLPs are in that conference schedule on that agenda somewhere. But it's like, yeah,
Coming,
everybody's
Tim, it's
studying it out.
coming.
It is. So it's
Yeah.
just this kind of this cohort right now are all much more aware of it, who are coming out of training. And so they're going to realize that the benefits of it, and it's not going to be as, I know. And it's like, I guess that's why a lot of people search out younger healthcare providers, because maybe they're up on the latest and greatest of the new techniques. Whereas it's the older providers that you should be able to listen to, because they have been able to collate all that information. They've been able to learn about it all, and they know what things don't work, what things do work, but they certainly have to be open-minded. They can't be like an old dog, new tricks kind of situation where they refuse to learn about these new things because they didn't learn about it in med school. That's the biggest problem for a healthcare provider. And they're wondering why they're seeing fewer patients. It's not just because that young whippersnapper is getting more traction on TikTok than you are. It's because they're also kind of providing some new information out there that patients are so starved for.
Why do you think, I mean, like, and I know we were running out of time. Why do you think that we had the report come out recently for the, obviously the height of diet culture in my experience, obviously I'm Gen X, but my experience was the 80s. Height of, like, it's just been like perpetual god awfulness, like our whole lives, Kat and I. And I started my first diet when I was 8. It was Weight Watchers, and then yet now, over the past 2 years, we're for the first time seeing a reduction in obesity. So obviously there's different controls possible, but what's the one thing that's changed? Right.
Obviously. So the most interesting studies that I've seen that come out, one is that they've reduced weight by 2%. That's the first time they've seen that in a very long time since they've been measuring it, I guess. And certainly it seems like these medications are the answer, the reason for that. But then there's other studies that it was Goldman Sachs commissioned a study where they found that if people got on these medications, it would actually raise the gross domestic product, the GDP, by 1%. Why would it increase the GDP by 1%? It was kind of a mean study. It said that it was because obese people were more likely to call in sick to work. So they were less productive, or if they did go into work, they were less likely to be productive while they were there. So if you reduce everybody's weight, then that would increase productivity, increase the GDP. Mean study, but that was another study that I thought was interesting, aside from the one that you brought up, where it was reducing it by 10%. The other study was that if United Airlines, if all of the passengers on United Airlines reduced their weight by 10 pounds, it would save them $80 million a year in jet fuel.
Jeez.
There's some major macroeconomic effects of these medications that I don't know how much longer people can ignore it. I don't know how much longer Jillian Michaels can ignore it.
I don't either. I mean, she's doubling down, that's for sure. I think that the one that's going on now, where I think it's in the UK, the Prime Minister was saying that they're doing a study for people that are not in the workforce anymore, like treating them and seeing if they get back to work. I'm like, why aren't we doing that? That's freaking amazing. Let's do that.
Okay.
I don't know how they're doing that, honestly, in the UK, because they have the National Health Service, which is so almost bankrupt. I mean, it's just like they can't afford to run it as is. I don't know how they can afford to, because they're paying for the meds for these people to be on these studies. It's like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Like, I think it's like a grant or something. It's from Eli Lilly. Yeah. And it's like, there's that. And then also the way it works with, at least for UK, I don't know about the rest of the world, they don't do obesity medicine. Like, you can't, it's not like that. Everybody gets it through kind of like not a compound pharmacy, but a separate pharmacy that's outside of the NHS. And that we just had some people on our show about it. We just had a compound or a pharmacist at one of the pharmacies, and then someone in our community that lives in Sussex that came on to tell us about it. And they're spending $150 US, like it's almost dollar for dollar, like a month. And they're not going through NHS at all. They're doing it like we do it. It's telehealth. And they have to send in a picture, and they have to be on a scale, and they have to do all these things. And then they're paying $150 a month, and they're getting single pen Mounjaros. They're getting single, like with like multi-dose pens.
Right.
Yeah. Like instead of like 4 pens a month, right? It's one to, so she showed it to us, and that's what they're getting. And they're paying $150 a month. And we were like, well, wait a minute. Cause we've been hearing that NHS and all these other places, they regulate prices like and negotiate with the company. And he goes,
Right.
no, he goes, we just get the price from Eli Lilly. The price is the price. And I was
Yeah.
like, because they don't do there, and obesity care is not really a thing there. They have that diabetic care, that's different. But here,
Right.
but in terms of obesity, it's outside that whole system. It's outside that whole
Yeah.
system.
And it just goes to show
it
you
doesn't cost this much. They're not charging them what they charge us.
Right. No, it definitely in America, it's the cost of, or it's so fascinating how the pharmaceutical companies can say with a straight face in Congress that we have to charge this amount in America because of all the different things, pharmacy benefit managers, things like that, where everybody knows how much less they're charging for the product in another country. And obviously there's complexities that we're not going to solve on this show. That they don't have insurance plans the same way we do. They don't have pharmacy benefit. And even though it's just wild because they didn't all start out complex like this. It's just evolved to this level of complexity for all of these different factors. And so having to find a way to unwind all of that is next to impossible, but somehow we're going to have to figure it out because it's going to bankrupt the country if we have to start paying for everybody at this rate, at this cost.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we're seeing, right? And that was one thing I did like about like with Bernie's statement and stuff. It does seem fairly bipartisan in that they were like,
it was very,
listen, it really was like,
very,
and the
very
one that
much
we did, I mean, they were very much like, all of us think prescription drugs, all bipartisan, should be less expensive than they are. It's outrageous, right? But they're going to have to get involved. I mean, that's like, I really think that's what it comes down to. No one's just going to do it. This is America. You're going to make people do it. You know what I'm saying? I think interesting with Lilly offering those vials, right, at that like cash price close to compound, like that was slick. I mean, that was just like, let's just go around the PBMs.
So so that was one thing that went around the pharmacy benefit managers by just having the lower dose vials, like 2.5 and 5 milligrams. But what they did is on the higher doses, they raised those prices. They did raise the price and they didn't want anybody to notice that, but people did find out eventually. But they, yes, they did a couple of clever things, but they lowered some lower prices. They raised the higher prices. And it's, so even though I think all this needs to be addressed, I do think that the opposite end of the spectrum, the argument that Bernie Sanders brought up is that these medications can be made for less than $5 a dose. I think that's unfair, unreasonable way of looking at it, because yes, that might be the case, but you're acting like you're ignoring the billions of dollars that it took to figure out how to develop these medications. So yes,
years and years. Plus, also people should be able to make money on their things. This is America. I'm saying, like, it's fine for you to do hard work and make money off it. I think it's just a matter of the fact that we are footing the bill for the rest of the world, right? I think
no
that's
question about it,
right? Like, I think that's and that has to change. And like, and I when Bloomberg, when they asked me, I don't think they were going to quote it, but they were like, well, what'd you think about this? And I was like, look, there's no way he was going to come in here and go, I charge you that much because I can. Like, there's no way he was going to say that, right? But ultimately, you're a business and you're going to get the money where you get the money. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's fine. You know?
And if the market bears it, that's what they're going to charge.
Right. But I think ultimately, and I do think they were saying, like, you know, the senators were saying, well, you know, what about Alzheimer's, diabetes? It is, like you said, going to completely, it's a huge burden. It's going to crumble our country if we don't address it now. And I think what's cool and what's something is that we're not talking about a short term, like, or our long term, we're going to do this now. We're going to see this like long term change. People are getting reversal of these massive issues like within months of taking these medicines. We're going to see it fast. And I just feel like somebody's going to have to do something, because they've been running their mouth about doing this for over a year now, and probably longer before that.
Right.
You know?
But the Congressional Budget Office, who is a bipartisan, or apolitical, the Congressional Budget Office, the study they did, and this is reference to what you just said, is that there are benefits long-term of losing weight and how that reduces the cost of, you know, cardiac disease and things like that down the road. But they were saying that the cost of the meds right now still outweighs those benefits. They're not saying that there's no benefits. They're not saying it's not worth trying to do this and help people lose weight. They're just saying because of the extent, the over $1,000 per month cost of the medications, that you're still not able to realize the financial savings. So if it was like $500 or $600 a month, then maybe the cost savings would be $600 or $700 a month, and then you'd start to realize those benefits. But it's just at this point, the cost is so astronomical that you can't appreciate or realize
Mhm.
those benefits, those savings.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
and so I think it's going to be a combination of government negotiation, but I think it's also going to be, and this is something we're seeing a lot more in America, is that people are paying for concierge primary care. They're not dealing with
Mhm.
their insurance as much anymore
Right.
for basic medical needs. And so I think people are going to have to start paying more out of pocket for the medication. I'm not talking about $1,000 out of
Yeah.
pocket, but somebody's got to pay for it. And if the government can't afford to pay for everybody, then Americans will have to start paying some of it. And I understand that gets into health disparities and inequities and things.
Mhm.
What I always say is that, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm just kind of telling you that
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
going to have to pay for it. And that's not going to all be able to come from the government.
Yeah, no. And I don't even, and like, that's the thing is like, I think there are people that want universal healthcare and all the things, but ultimately, like, I would like to talk about what's like possible and like something that we can do faster. And I think us coming in as a government in some way, and I don't know, I'm not a government, and saying, this is too high of a price, right? Or even if we don't do that, because I know we kind of did it with insulin, getting the PBMs in line, like this whole rebate shit is out of control. Like bottom line, like it's out of control. They're making money and bitching that they're losing money. And that blows my mind because that's what they've been preaching to all of us. Like since we were like, well, you're only paying $1,000 a month for your whole family to be insured, but your medicine's $1,000 a month. And I'll be like, that's not my problem. You're insurance. You know what I'm saying? Like seriously, that's what
the rebates. And the rebates are like girl math. It's like saying, oh, we're going to charge $300 more, but we're going to give you a discount of $200. I was like, well, wait a second. I'm still paying $100 more.
Yeah. And he still couldn't say like, oh, this is how much it costs. And they were like, all right, well, it looks like on average, it's probably about $600. Like, would you agree with that? And he was kind of like, you know what I'm like? Why? Because he does it different with every PBM. And why? Because we let them. As this country, we'll let them. We've got to do something in that general, because the idea of completely shifting the system, I don't feel like is realistic. There are people that are literally very sick and dying now, right? Not to mention going to be a huge drain every minute of every day as they get older and get onto Medicare, right? So I think let's just figure out what we can do now. Let's try to figure this out together. I was very encouraged that the senators spoke about obesity, understanding what a horrible disease it is. Like it wasn't some of them seemed a little bit more ignorant around the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes and the food not being the problem as much as they think that it is, right? But for the most part, hearing our leaders, right, in any capacity speak about this in this
really
way
well educated
was the first thing since I started this journey over 2 years ago that was encouraging to me,
Right.
Like
well,
that was
one of the ranking member, the highest member from the Republican side on that help committee with Bernie Sanders is Bill Cassidy, and he's a hepatologist. He's a physician from Louisiana. He was actually one of my professors in med school, so he definitely gets it. He's definitely seen firsthand, the possibility of these medications reversing fatty liver disease. So he definitely gets the science behind it. He just may not be he doesn't buy into that $5 per dose cost. That's all we should charge them.
That's totally
he gets
fair.
that reality of that. But
I
he definitely gets
not
it.
reality either. Yeah.
It's a good talking point. Just like you said at the beginning, Bernie Sanders is good at coming up with the buzzwords for TikTok. And he figured that out before that. He understands the hook. Yeah. And even though it's not it's a bad faith argument, it is definitely a hook nonetheless.
Yes, for sure. Well, this has been lovely. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the broad base, the broad breadth of the conversation, that it was not just the pharmacological aspects, but also that's why I found this whole thing, the medication so fascinating, because it's not just the pharmacology, but it's the politics, the economics, the social, the social impact. I mean, you can't. What other medication you talk about? You don't talk about Botox as having social impact.
Absolutely not. You're right.
People love it.
It helps with migraines.
Indeed, with certain patients, that is correct.
Yeah,
but it's just nothing has
help with my 11 here, so
I need it everywhere.
Too bad I can't treat you virtually.
Yeah, right.
I know, right?
At least for the Botox.
Walk me through it.
Exactly right.
Can I ask one?
Same way we do the weekly injections for the weight loss meds. We work people through the injection. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I got a little baby question. It's not related to any of this. I have a niece who is studying medicine. There's a lot of telehealth popping up.
Right.
And do you see that as a trend, maybe like with young and up and comings, or would you recommend maybe a younger medical student considering starting their own telehealth?
So you're referring to like joining a telehealth company as an independent contractor, or them starting their own practice of just doing telehealth?
Either one. Interesting.
So,
Yeah. Because
so there's,
listen, I was a communications major. I know nothing about it.
Same.
so
Marketing in the house, PR in the
right.
house.
So I think that every provider definitely needs to offer telehealth in some aspect of their practice. Now,
Yeah.
an orthopedic surgeon may say, "Well, no, I really need to, feel the patient's need, to see where things are lax, to see if they're a
Mhm.
candidate for surgery." But certainly, as an initial visit or for follow up, I definitely think telehealth has a place for every single provider. And also, are we really asking the elderly to come in? I know they might have trouble figuring out the technology, but are we really asking them to, think about all the
True. Yeah.
the effects of the productivity decrease of having to call a family member to take time off of work to bring their elderly parent
Right.
into the office when they could just do it. I mean, especially when they get there and it's a 10-minute visit, like they clearly could have done that via telehealth.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect, is everybody needs to have telehealth in their practice. But the other thing is that as far as a healthcare provider getting out of med school, remember, after med school, you don't even have to do a whole residency. You could just do 1 year of residency called the internship, and that gets you eligible to get a medical license. That's all you have to have is a medical. You don't actually have to go and do 3 years of pediatrics or 5 years of general surgery. I mean, if you want to practice those fields, probably so. But if you just want a medical license, you just do 1 year. And so there are going to be people absolutely that after 1 year get their medical license, that they're either going to join a telehealth provider, start their own telehealth program, and they're just going to basically be able to clock in and clock out, and they're going to be offering all these consultations electronically, virtually, and they're going to, as long as if they're willing to work lots of hours, they're going to be able to do relatively well with almost no overhead other than malpractice insurance.
Yeah.
So I think that's,
Exciting.
even though they're producing more doctors and
Mhm.
nurse practitioners and physicians
Yeah.
assistants, I think it's going to be an interesting dearth of specialists, because people are going to be just generalists. So you'll have more providers, but there'll be more generalists just
Interesting.
doing
Okay.
this telehealth play, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
where have fewer people who are going to be doing the 5 years of general surgery, the 7 years of
Okay.
neurosurgery, and things like that.
Mm.
There'll still be people who are dedicated to doing those things, but there'll just be fewer of those specialists in the future than there are now.
Oh, that's
So
kind of like
that's,
we kind of need more specialists, though, don't we? Or
well, the specialists certainly, the people who are looking for a residency spot as a specialty, yes, they think we need more specialty spots. But once you finish that residency, you don't want as many other people coming through, because then there's more competition. So it depends on who you ask.
Which is crazy, because it takes months to be able to get into these places. You know what I'm saying? Like the specialists, like that's the thing I tell people all the time. Like, listen, I wish I had started with an obesity specialist. I wish I had started with an endocrinologist. I wish I had started. I didn't. I just went to my regular doctor, which was hard enough because I had been avoiding it like the plague, right? And that was hard enough. But when people go, it's rarely a good experience. Do you know?
No, it's a terrible experience.
Yeah,
I mean, when I go to the dentist or I go to a doctor for whatever, that's like, it takes forever to get anybody on the phone. When I show up in scrubs, they might treat me a little bit better, but I mean, it's like they don't know how to print out the bill for me to pay for it. Like I have insurance, but there's sometimes it's just not worth going through insurance. And like the credit card machine doesn't work, that they don't know how to run it, or they don't know how much it costs, of course. And that's how we all got started, was in price transparency. But that's the thing. It's a terrible experience. And that's actually one of the things, is there was a webinar that Medscape put out a while back called "We're All Obesity Doctors Now." And that was kind of their point, is that there's not enough obesity doctors, so you can't get in to see one. And like if obesity doctors were the only people who could see people who were trying to lose weight, then they would all have like 33,000 patients that they were trying to see. And so that's why they're saying that all providers need to help out with this, because the truth is, most providers, whatever we're treating, the underlying cause of it is obesity. And that's why I alluded to this at the beginning, is that you have dermatologists that are using our network now that are offering weight loss meds, because one of the most common causes of acne is obesity. OBGYNs, one of the most common causes of infertility is obesity, and also high-risk pregnancies. One of the most common causes of erectile dysfunction is obesity. So that's why urologists are getting into this, cardiologists. And so that's why every healthcare provider in America needs to be offering this. One is to increase access, but because it actually, if we're trying to talk about doctors doing the right thing and treating the right problem, I mean, I think that's a pretty basic thing, is do no harm and treat the problem. Then the problem a lot of times is obesity. So rather than the ear, nose, and throat doctor giving the patient a CPAP machine, maybe treat their obesity and they lose weight and then they no longer have sleep apnea.
Right.
And that's going to be like a big mind paradigm shift. You keep pointing to yourself for all these things I mentioned.
That's me.
So you're benefiting from these GLPs, which is makes sense. Why, which is makes sense why you would have a podcast on the topic. I mean,
Right.
Well, when you've been sick your whole life and people have called you kind of gluttonous and lazy, you know, still pretty with a pretty face, but like all these things your whole life. And then you take a medicine that turns things off like that and you go, holy shit, maybe it wasn't my fault. Then you just want to be an evangelist and scream about it all the time. What I do, you know, but it's not like I'm like, oh, you need to get on these meds. You need to have a conversation with your doctor and understand your disease and understand these meds. And if they can't do that for whatever reason, because a lot of people don't know, I'm trying to provide it here, right? Like it's almost like an aggregator. You know, I'm trying to bring it together.
And I can't tell you how many times I've told the commenters on TikTok when they're saying my doctor won't do this or that. It's like, you need to find another provider.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, I mean, they're so far behind the times at this point that if you don't have a provider that will at least, you know, talk to you about these weight loss meds and not tell you that they're all terrible and you shouldn't do them, then you need to find another provider that will at least have an honest conversation with you.
I mean, and I really thought my OB, like when I went to my OB-GYN for my yearly, I was excited about the appointment because I had lost so much weight since I'd been there last. And I was like, it's going to be great. Like they're going to talk about that. And that is not how it went. That is not how it went. I'm like, clearly like doesn't understand PCOS, doesn't understand obesity, doesn't understand like he was like, so what's your goal weight? And I was like, ultimately, man, my goal is health. Like I'm almost 45. Like I've been obese almost my whole life. Like, you know, my goal is health, you know, that's my goal. And he was like, it needs to be under 2. You should never have a 2 in front of your name ever.
Jeez.
And I just like stared at him and he goes, and I go, well, and I'm trying, and I'm gonna
try to bite your tongue.
Their advocate, right? And but he was also, I was also no clothes on, like about to, you know, be examined. And so that was also weird. You know, like, why are we talking about this? And like, it was just clear how ignorant he wanted us. I want to be like, do you want to know all the things I know? Like, but I didn't, you know, because I completely forgot everything. I reverted right back to Kim that just took what she was given, right? And didn't ask and didn't advocate for health and didn't say what it is that she needs and why she needs it. Like I went right back to old Kim because I was in a very vulnerable like position. But I said to him, I was like, well, I'm very tall and I'm, you know, I'm older. And he goes, it doesn't matter. My wife is 130 and maybe it might be 135 or 140, but like her frame is just smaller. Women are smaller. That's just how it is. And I'm like, there is nothing I can say to help you. Like if you are thinking that way, and he's young, if you are thinking that way, we have a problem. Like, you know, and then he was also like, so when are you getting off of it? And I'm like, get out of here. I didn't ask you. Like, I didn't ask you. I didn't say I want to talk about this. What should you be saying? How well I've done, right? Or maybe ask me if I want to talk about my weight. I'm here for you to check my business, not you know what I'm saying? Like, I have
mind your business.
Like, you know, and like that, it was really hard. Like, even when I went to like I went and saw my primary care, great nurse practitioner there. And she was like, so you're not losing anymore. Maybe you should go up to 15. I'm like, and this is how I handled this time. I went, you know what? I've been on 15. It was a lot for me. If anything, I ate more on 15. I didn't lose any weight. But what I do know is that I have an obesity doctor and we've got this covered. Like, and so I finally, like, I was like, this
shut them down.
And she was like, okay, you know, and that was fine, you know, but I had to say that because they don't have a clue. We've got to get more education out there for them.
But it sounded like that was just, but it was crazy. Even though they don't know a lot about the obesity side of things, they just sound like not very compassionate, not supportive, not optimistic, which I'm not sure how you teach that at this point.
I know, right?
That day, I
watch our show. That's the thing.
Seriously,
if you watch our show and you hear the stories of these people that come on our show and share their story, it is deeply moving. It is deeply moving. People, I mean, Rosie O'Donnell came on our show and talked about being on Mounjaro and her whole weight story, how she was treated in Hollywood, all these different things. And like, I mean, they just have to watch it, you know? And so,
And the thing is, people are afraid to talk about it too, because they get so quickly shamed because they talk about body shaming. Like you shame people, you don't shame people who are overweight, but then when they lose weight, they start to shame them. It's the craziest thing. They make them feel bad and judge them for using it was a cop out that they took the easy way out. They took the medication.
Yes.
Financially, it's not
Ain't
always
nothing easy about this. And also, I have to be more mindful of what I eat, how I eat, when I eat than I ever was when I wasn't on the medicine.
Right.
It's almost harder. Like, honestly. Now, in terms of easy, it actually working, yes, that's easy, and I'll take it all day, every day, like all day, every day, because I deserve it. Everybody deserves it. They do.
Yep.
They deserve health. Period. Right. So I'll just run my mouth about it a lot. See, evangelist, hallelujah.
But you're right. You have to get that same feeling you have. That's what you need to. That's what you're trying to convey to everybody else.
Yes.
That's what you're trying to convey to your audience.
Yes. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get loud and change things, because just we don't shrink anymore. You know,
Nightline's listening.
Yes.
Nightline and whoever else get picked up by.
We honestly we had to show up. Like, but that's what we did. That's what it took, right? We went, it was my husband's idea. He was like, let's go. We need to have representation. He was like, and I go, well, I don't know about this stuff. What do we like, do signs? Like, what are we doing? He goes, no. He goes, we're going to get a shirt. And I go, what the shirt's going to say? I was like, all these people that like hold up signs about Jesus.
Great shirt. When you walk in,
what they're doing. No one's going to go, oh yeah, Jesus. Like, we're all works, you know? And I told him all the time, like, you know, it's my show. I can say what I want. And like, you know what I mean? So I was like, that's what I said. And he was like, no, we're just going to have it say, make GLP-1s affordable. So I went, okay. So I made shirts that said that. And then I got our podcast logo. And then on the back, I had a QR code so they could scan it and go to our website. And then we got on all those things. You know,
genius.
And then it was my husband's idea. Like, and he's just a redneck.
Does that aggravate you that it was all his idea?
Yes. I'm in marketing. What the crap? You know what he always tells me? I'm just a dumb hillbilly. I'm like, clearly not. No, he does good things. He brings a good like perspective to help us like consider other things. But you know, this has been a good role for us, like being asked to like be in reports and stuff as any kind of authority on anything for the podcast is massive, and that's just gonna help us going forward. Like we really do just want to help people, you know, like we just want more people to know they're not alone and that it's not their fault, and then there's this way, you know. So that's what we're focusing on. Thanks.
We love finding doctors like you.
Yes. No. Thanks for coming and helping us.
I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Good.
But it's just great that the way you've obviously not only your personal experiences, but you've crowdsourced all this information from all the other patients out there. And so y'all have become this like really expert resource. Yeah. So people don't have to go out and see what all the crowdsourcing has been done. You've done it already.
We're trying to do that. We want
you've embodied it.
Yeah. That's what we're trying to do. Like, but honestly, we didn't know when Kat and I started this. We were just like, let's just get on a show and talk about this. And I did say this. I go, from the beginning, I knew that we had to bring these stories and the doctors together because we had TikTok. And I was like, it's a duet. It's a stitch, right?
Right.
It's a long form content stitch. And then I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And then it just started working. And I just started chanting it. I was like, I'm writing a hit song. I'm just going to run my mouth as much as I can. And I'm exhausted.
Science, facts, and data.
Yeah. Facts, science, and data. That's what we say. Validate the experience with facts, science, and data.
That's a winning combination.
Thank you so much for helping us do this. This is a contribution to this movement, and we're very, very thankful. We'll put all of your information in the show notes so people can find you on TikTok, people can find your practice, learn more about what you do. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
No, thank you all so much.
Yeah. For the hat, go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Roll Tide.
Not so much this past weekend.
Well, yeah, you know. Listen, we always roll, even when the Tide was blowing chunks, but they were doing okay. We still roll.
And LSU is still upset that we lost Saban to y'all.
Yeah.
Eventually lost Saban to y'all.
It was a good one. It was a good deal.
That was a good hire on y'all's part.
Clearly.
Anyway, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaplan. Have a great day.
Y'all too.
Have a great one. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh, that was so good. Dr. Kaplan kicks ass.
He kicks total butt.
Total butt. It's badass.
Ass. Dr. Kaplan, if you see all the way to this very end, we just said you kick ass.
Yeah, he'll see it. He'll watch it. I feel like it. But it's great. I mean, we're going to send him clips and stuff, which will be super good. So I love that. I mean, that's how it all came about, right? And I've been wanting to get Dr. Kaplan on for a while, but I can't go to them. He's so big on TikTok and stuff. Like, and that's one of the hardest things with this. But I will tell you, since that, I've had 3 doctors come to me. Like I haven't had to chase doctors because it's important, and then they recognize that it's important, and it's just it's a blessing to have them contribute to this movement, and I'm just so thankful for every time they do it for us, It's just so helpful. Such a good one. Such a good one. I hope everybody loved this episode. And don't forget, I'm going to put Dr. Kaplan's information in, but do not forget, when this comes out, click on the link and go and vote for the Anthem Awards for the Community Voice, because you are the community and this is your voice. And if anybody should get that award for the community voice, it's our community, because our community is
you guys
strong.
matter.
You matter. We wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. Like, honestly, you've got I'm sorry, but like we say it all the time, people with obesity, we have the most grit. And if anything, we constantly try again and again and again with little reward and constant what feels like failure, right? That's what we've grown up in, So I think that if there's anybody that's got the gumption and the tenacity to move this shit forward, it's us. And we'll show up all day long with our signs or with our shirts. And I'll also have a link to the shirts. I've been meaning to do it.
Make GLP-1s affordable.
Make GLP-1s affordable. I don't care how they do it. I don't care. Just fix it. Gotta fix it.
Affordable.
Yeah, love it. Okay. Well, this was a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for your help as always, Kat. I love you.
Love you. You matter, people. So remember, share, comment, all the things, like
all the things. That is what makes a movement move. You. Okay. All right. We love you.
Hasta la pasta.
20 seconds a week to lose 20% of your weight in a year with diet and exercise. That's the power of GLP-1s through Ro. Ro helps find the medication that's right for you, based on cost, availability, and your weight loss goals. Losing weight with GLP-1s is possible through Ro.
Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, wegovy, and Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to the Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.